So the not so secret reality of Wall Street is that products are sold and not bought. So I just want you to imagine an army, a legion of people. They're going to bring coffee and donuts to these brokerage offices or these FA offices, and they're going to be giving the mantra speech about Bitcoin.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for tuning into The Scoop. I'm your host, Frank Chaparro, editor-at-large at The Block, and we have a very exciting episode of the program for you today with Anthony Scaramucci, founder and managing partner at SkyBridge Capital, joining us on the other side of the mic. We've got a lot to talk about. As you were saying before we turned on the mics, a lot can change in a year, a lot can change in a quarter, a lot can change in a few weeks, but I want to start with maybe just some personal stuff with you before we dive into a lot of the issues at hand, the cool topics shaping the market, maybe what new blockchains you're possibly looking at. Who knows? So there were headlines, right, about you being keen to sell some of SkyBridge or selling it completely.
Well, I don't know who said I was selling SkyBridge completely. I mean, all I'm trying to do is buy back the stake that we sold to Sam, which is now trapped in that bankruptcy morass, that sort of Bermuda Triangle known as the bankruptcy, which I think we'll be able to do. Triangle. Yeah, exactly. Bahama Triangle. So I think we'll be able to do it. But Frank, I got to ask you a question before we really get ripping here. Sure. Did you have a good time at Crypto Bahamas?
I did, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that was like one of the all-star peak events, right? I mean, I thought it was one of the best events that we ever put on, and I've done these events for 15 years. I just feel like it's been a big letdown and roller coaster ride from April of 2022 when we were both at Crypto Bahamas together.
Yeah, but it seems like we're coming back. The events that we had in Asia this past summer kind of almost marked the very start of this new bull cycle. So
I agree.
Everyone's now trying to get a piece of your event's pie, as it were. They're trying to replicate SALT to the best of their ability.
And I don't, by the way, I don't mind that. The more the merrier. We just did SALT in Singapore. We attached the Singapore FinTech Week, and it was a great experience for both parties. People were able to go back and forth between the two conferences. There were great cross-networking events. And so I'm open for business. We may end up doing a SALT in Hong Kong. So your viewers and listeners should keep us in mind there. And again, we'll probably team up with somebody. But to dispel rumors, I'm looking to buy something. I'm not looking to sell. I'd like to buy back my stake, which is a minority stake, non-voting stake, non-economic preference stake from the bankruptcy estate. And I'm looking to acquire possibly another fund of funds to go into my core business or a crypto advisor. And so we're in the marketplace to buy, not to sell. And Frank, I'm 60 years young, January 6th of 2024. I was born in 1960.
So this is my bad. I just don't know how to read. I had the headline link to Bloomberg.
Yeah.
Make an acquisition.
Yes, make an acquisition.
The firm's poised to make an acquisition.
That's more accurate. No, I have no interest in selling. I love my business. I love my work. I will say this: you sons of bitches in crypto can age people. I mean, you age like. I mean, this is like. Listen. I've been in the space since October of 2020, and I love the space. And I think that the space is a big part of the future for U.S. finance and global finance. And listen, I'm proud to tell you, we got there 3 years ahead of BlackRock. And we are the first outside money into the BlackRock Bitcoin Trust that is likely to get converted into an ETF. And I guess the only thing I'm slightly worried about right now, if you don't mind me just sharing this, everybody, is the rug pull from a Gary Gensler. Gary Gensler is Lucy, and you and me, Frank, are Charlie Brown. Okay, we're stepping up to the football, ready to kick the football. Is Gary going to pull the football from the industry again? And here's what I would say to people. It doesn't matter. I mean, maybe it'll matter in the short term. Your portfolio valuation will go down in the short term, but it really doesn't matter in the long term because the momentum is there. The ETPs and the ETFs are building around the world. Hong Kong is obviously getting approval to launch a cash Bitcoin ETF. You've got several of them up in Canada. You've got a few in Europe. And so it really doesn't matter. He's lost several lawsuits. He'll lose the ensuing lawsuit if he does another rug pull, and you'll eventually get it here. So the good news about our country still is a very flat country. We don't really have czars or dictators. If we did, Gary would have his way. But we have a check and balance court system in the country. He keeps losing these court cases. And so that bodes well for the industry.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so looking to the future, right? Anthony Scaramucci is looking to explore an acquisition in the next 12 to 18 months. Obviously, kind of clear up the cap table with the whole SAM tie-in there, similar to what we had to do here at the block as well, which we were lucky enough to clear up last week. What type of does the acquisition, could a potential acquisition have anything to do with crypto, or is it some different type of fund-to-fund strategy?
No, I would say I'm open-minded. So if you have something in the crypto space you want to show me, I'll take a look. I could buy a crypto fund. I could buy a crypto advisor. I looked at a few things in past for different reasons. But I'm also looking at fund-to-funds, core traditional fund-to-funds where maybe some of the founders are looking for exits and looking for some consolidation where we can pay them an earn-out, something like that. I'm open to it. Some of the banks.
Are you still looking at businesses?
Yeah.
Are you still looking at businesses within the space?
Businesses, asset management companies, funds that are coming out of an asset management company. There's some things in bankruptcy at the Silicon Valley Bank that we looked at. Unfortunately, I don't think they're ready to sell any of those yet. But we've looked at them, and I'm open-minded, and we're well capitalized, and obviously we're having a great year, probably one of the best years of my career, and I'm always bullish, so that's probably unfair, but I'm very bullish here, and not saying that we can predict prices in the near term, but over the next 24 to 36 months, I think you have less supply in the marketplace and possibly lots more demand. That usually bodes well for prices. And so, I can remember missing something seminal, and I think I may have shared this with you, but I got Amazon wrong. I missed Amazon. Warren Buffett said that Jeff Bezos gave this great speech at this event. He was explaining how it wasn't an internet bookseller in the year 2000 and it was going to sell everything. And I was like, oh my God, I got to buy this. And then Warren Buffett came on and said, this internet bookseller is worth more than Sears Roebuck. How is that possible? Could you imagine that? All the bricks and mortar at Sears being worth less than this internet bookseller. And of course, that's out of business, and Amazon is about to overtake Walmart as the largest retailer in the country, and it doesn't have the cost footprint of Walmart. That's what's going on in Web3. This payment system, this tokenization, the uses of things like Bitcoin or Ethereum or Matic are going to exponentially grow, and you and I are going to be transacting with each other without the need for a third party. And that's happening.
Yeah, and that's playing out in earnest. It's playing out in earnest over the past few weeks. We've seen this announcement between Apollo and JP Morgan leveraging blockchain technology for portfolio construction in alternative asset funds. It's something that probably connects and ties into your business, right? The added liquidity and transparency.
And they're using our friends at Oasis Pro. I'm on the advisory board of Oasis Pro, so they made that announcement this morning. They have other announcements that they're going to likely make by the end of the year, which will be equally fascinating and exciting. But Frank, man, I need a lot of hair dye these days. I would be grayer than your grandmother, grayer than your Nona, okay? Because of what you guys do to me in the crypto space, okay?
Yeah, I was at a game night down here in Jersey a few weeks ago, and my friend's wife basically said that she needs to get me set up with her lady because it's just getting pretty bad here. My Uncle Nino is very disappointed that I haven't been coming
in. Color early, okay? You can't color late, okay? As I tease my friend Sean Hannity, he looks like a snowman now on television. He could have colored early. You got to color early, Frank.
I think I'm about
Especially
to
hit
my inflection point.
Yeah, look, you got look. Some Italians are bald, but not us. We are the Chia Pet Italians. Okay, I got the hair growing like an Italian chia pet. You got
We're
to color
closer to
early.
God in that sense.
Amen. But Frank, big lesson for your listeners and your viewers. Okay, stay in things. Don't get shaken out of them. Don't get spooked. I came out of Davos.
Are some of these lessons in the book?
Oh, you're talking about my new book? Yeah, 100%. So my new book is From the White House to Wall Street and Back is the title of the book. It's coming out on April the 16th. And I'm blessed to have Governor Schwarzenegger, who read the book, read a manuscript of it. He endorsed it for me. The subtitle is The Scaramucci Guide to Unbreakable Resilience. How you stay in things. You disregard the noise, disregard the music. I was fired and torched from the White House, lit up by the late night comedians, roasted on cable television, parodied on Saturday Night Live. Don't care. I'm in the game. I got lit up last year, arguably one of the worst years of my career. Bloomberg wrote a obituary. Basically, it was sort of sad to see my obituary while I was living, but I mean, they said I was dead and my business sucked and I was going to zero. And as I pointed out to Bloomberg a few weeks back, we're up only 65% since you guys wrote that. So hopefully you'll write another negative story about me soon, which will lead to greater heights. The point being is,
I remember when we talked about that story. I mean, you were pretty fired up, and you don't necessarily.
No, I was upset because
you don't necessarily get angry that often. You're
but let me tell you why
you're pretty Teflon, but you were pretty pissed off.
Okay, but I want to tell you why I was fired up. If you're going to write a negative story about me, and there's a lot of things in there that are justifiably negative, my performance, and maybe some employees didn't like me or whatever it was, I get all that, and it's absolutely fine to write that, but if I am willing to sit with you for 2 hours and take every one of your questions, do we not get at least a half a paragraph of a counter narrative? You know, it's got to be just absolutely ridiculously one-sided. You see what I'm saying? So listen, free press, write whatever you want. The woman who wrote it, I invited her to the SALT conference. Don't care, but a little more balance would have been appreciated. But whatever, we're through that. But Frank, we're going from that. I'm at the World Economic Forum last year. I leave San Moritz. I drive to Davos, Switzerland. And I come out of the World Economic Forum, and one of the journalists says to me, "What did you learn here?" I said, "Well, Bitcoin's definitely going up in 2023. He said, "Well, why is that?" I said, "There were 3,000 delegates here that pronounced Bitcoin's death." Okay, and these are the very same delegates in 2007 that said the economy was going to the moon. Then it crashed. And then in 2009, they said that the earth was going to open and we were all going to fall into Hades. And we started the largest bull market in U.S. economic history. In 2016, they said Hillary Clinton was going to win the presidency. No problem. And in 2020, right before COVID, that very same group of people said that Donald Trump was going to win. So here we were at the end of the conference, January 2023, where we're being told that Bitcoin's going to zero and it should be written off and, you know, decentralized pet rock and all this sort of nonsense. So what are the lessons that are in my book, or what are the lessons that you explain to people on your wonderful podcast? Hey, man, ignore the noise, stay in the game. Showing up and being present is literally 90% of the battle. And if you can see yourself through to the other side, and not to get biblical, but what does the Bible talk about? 7 fat years, 7 years of drought. Okay. The parable is about recognizing that you're not going to catch everything right all the time. You know, we're talking about Amazon. Amazon was written off by Barron's and others in the year 2000 when the stock went from 116 to 8. If you stayed with it, your $10,000 investment there is worth $17 million today at today's prices. And last time I checked, Jeff Bezos is shooting himself into outer space in his own rocket, Frank.
Yeah.
Okay, and he's floating around in the Mediterranean on his own yacht. You know, but they had him written off in 2000, dead. Amazon.bomb. So big lessons here. Stay in things. Don't get shaken out of things due to changes in short-term sentiment.
You mentioned your age. A lot of people, you know, most of their lessons, especially when it comes to career or professional lessons, they ascertain them in early years, formative years. There's some, our friend Mike Novogratz has some really interesting anecdotes from his dismissal or exit from Goldman. But are there any later, careers can even be dynamic in later parts of their existence? The SAM tie-up. Any lessons from that that you?
Well, listen, I got that completely wrong. I have a text on my phone from you from a year ago, where you were one of the good guys that reached out to me and asked me, "Hey, are you okay?" The truth was, I'm gonna be okay, but am I okay right now? No, I'm reeling from what I thought was a legit, real deal guy. Now, what I find amusing about the whole thing is you've got these guys that come out of the woodwork now and say, "Oh, I knew the whole time," and they revise history. I had one person, I was at a luggage thing picking up my luggage on a trip. The person comes over to me and says, "Well, I knew Sam was a fraud. How could you not have known Sam was a fraud?" I looked over at him and I said, "Well, didn't you have an account at FTX?" He didn't realize I remembered the account. "Oh, yes, I did." I said, "Well, if you had an account at FTX, how could you have known it was a fraud?" You see what I mean? People revise the history and they try to pretend that they knew things that they didn't know. Nobody knew that Bernie Madoff was a fraud. After the fact, everybody said that they knew. I didn't know. You know what I mean? And then secondarily, the SAM thing, the communications consultants, the crisis communications consultants, don't talk to Frank Chaparro about it. Don't talk to Frank Chaparro about it. Okay, why not? Well, you're raising it and you're creating too much publicity around it. I said, no, I see it the very opposite. I want my clients, my friends, my potential clients, the people I'm going to do business with, to hear me out, know that I'm an open book, and know that I'm willing to accept responsibility and talk about it. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I have so many. I mentioned a few people's names once in an interview. They went crazy on me. What are you trying to do? You're trying to sweep under the rug that you made the mistake and had money with Sam that you lost? Yes, I am. Okay, I don't live like that. I'm never going to live like that.
I think the biggest issue any asset management firm or investor or trader could have made over the past year was effectively looking at what Sam did and then basically assuming that meant that the value of crypto was less than it was. With Solana probably being the poster child, right? So many venture capitalists out on the sidelines because they saw this token so much connected to and tied to Sam's empire that it stands to reason, right? If you have LPs, you're going to have to answer to them. And the question from them would be, why are you parking money into this Sam coin? But look at the run up. I mean, we're at over 400% this year. And similarly with crypto, if you sort of sat on the sidelines because of this once in a generation financial calamity, you would have missed out on a lot of money. But anyway, that being said, let's maybe just talk about the market for a little bit. Obviously, things look a bit better than they did with inflation print coming down and the less concerns, especially with recent earnings around potential recession. A lot of people are looking at this holiday season as a forecast of how we expect the economic picture to shape up. What are you anticipating, and are there any sort of negative signals that you're potentially looking for? Obviously, if macro is not looking great, that's not great for crypto.
Oh, well, number one, the Lucy from Peanuts rug pull from the SEC related to the Bitcoin Cash ETF. They still have it in their authority to write a memo and say that they need to continue to review this and reject the applications, and they can come up with some procedural reason. It'll get challenged in the courts, but it could delay the authorization for a Bitcoin ETF for 6 to 12 months. So that's number one. I don't think the marketplace it's a weird marketplace. I don't think the marketplace has fully priced in the positive impact of that ETF, because I think there are skeptics out there like me that think there could be a rug pull. But I will also say there's enough people that have priced it in where if there is a rug pull, you could see a drop, short-term drop in crypto prices in general, Bitcoin specifically. So that's one that I worry about. Number two, I think it's fairly evident to most people around the world and most adults in the United States that we're going to be choosing between dementia and demented. So the bumper stickers will be, do you want someone that has dementia, or do you want someone that's completely demented to be the president of the United States? And the demented one's on his way to dementia. And so they have a combined age of 158 years on the planet. And I'm all for respecting my elders, but let me tell you something. The same way Michael Jordan was having a hard time, greatest basketball player in history at 42 playing in the NBA, at age 78 and age 80, these are the wrong ages for American presidents, okay? Until you're telling me about some elixir.
Yeah. My favorite fun fact is that Trump's grandfather was born before the Civil War.
Okay, so there you go. Think about that. So the magnitude of that, I think, is weighing on people. And, if you have an event where somebody like Kamala Harris becomes the president, I think that impacts the entire situation a lot. I mean,
what sort of prescriptions, aside from her capabilities, do you think would impact markets?
Well, I think the treasury markets would be impacted. If you put somebody at the top of the government, whatever you think of Joe Biden, he's staffed appropriately, and he's been a senior person in the American government, 5 decades of service to the American government. There's continuity there. Okay, even Trump, as much as I don't want him to be president again, because I think he's a threat to the democracy, I think people would say, okay, he'll staff reasonably appropriately, and he's inside the mainstream as it relates to budget processing. I think she's just ridiculously unproven. And I think a lot of this stuff is confidence. I can remember the night that Trump won the presidency, the markets traded off for about 2 hours. When it became clear that he was winning, the market soared. They saw him, rightly or wrongly, as a pro-business guy. They will not see Kamala Harris like that. They'll see her as a woke-leaning, virtue-signaling person at the top of the U.S. government.
Yeah, it seems all about narratives, right?
And I think that impacts the confidence. So listen, I mean, there's a group of people you could bring onto your podcast and say the government doesn't matter, focus on the business. I disagree with that now, because the government, at least in my life, is over 50% of my business. If I make $1 here in New York, 52 cents of it shoots out the door. I'm a minority partner in my own life. I get to keep 48 cents. 52 goes to Eric Adams and Kathy Hochul and Joe Biden. I mean, they're my majority partners. That's why I tell people you got to get involved in the hiring decisions, particularly when you're now a minority partner in your own life. So to me, if she wins the presidency, God forbid, if something happens to Joe Biden or he gets reelected and something happens to him in a second term, you had the inauguration of FDR in 1944, and by April, he died on April 12th or April 13th of 1944, and then boom, you got Harry Truman as your president for 3 years and 3 quarters. And thank God he was an able and capable guy. But this scares people. I think this threatens the macro environment.
Okay.
You could have a debt crisis, Frank. No one's really talking about it. But if you continue to
government debt or consumer debt, what are both worrying?
Government debt. The consumer is reasonably tilting over levered now. They were in a savings position 3 years ago after
credit
COVID
card
started.
Delinquencies are apparently signaling a 2024 recession.
Yeah, they're tilting to over leverage now, but it's really the government. The government's printing money hand over fist, and you've got $1 trillion of interest rate expenses. They, of course, can't afford it. They don't have the tax revenues coming in to meet it. So they'll print money to make up the shortfall. Whatever you think of the Argentinian president, he said if printing money is going to make you rich, then printing diplomas would make you smart. Meaning, this can't go on forever. You can't make that math work forever. It eventually comes home to bite you. And it has in the U.S. It's bitten middle class and lower middle class living standards. You take a US dollar in 71, $35 an ounce, 2023, 52 years later, $2,000 an ounce. You really hammered the money. You took the money down 98%. $2 in 1971 have the purchasing power of a $100 bill today. And if you stop and think about the magnitude of that, that's hurt the middle and lower middle class. People that are working with their hands for their income, they get damaged. If you own assets or you own Bitcoin or stocks or real estate, it's a comfortable hedge against this type of monetization, but it's still not perfect. And listen, Frank, I'm not a naysayer. I'm a big bull on the United States and a big bull that we can solve all these problems. I'm just responding to the question, what could go wrong? Those are the things that can go wrong. What could go right is you get the cash ETF approved. BlackRock begins that process alongside of ARK and Fidelity and others. They sell that product to their clients. It goes into a tactical asset allocation, broad-based macro strategy around Wall Street. $50 to $80 billion of Bitcoin is purchased over the next year, which raises the market valuation to over $1 trillion. That could happen. You get a soft landing in the economy where the inflation numbers are coming down, but the economy's still strong. Biden wins the presidency and stays healthy for 4 years. So you have some continuity there. If Trump wins, I think you get this short-term burst for business. But I think as he showed last time, he's too high maintenance and too reckless. He'll be driving people crazy again with these tweets and all that.
You think if Trump wins, surely that will be the last term, or is that not a guarantee?
No. The way it works is he's entitled to one more term.
Yeah, of course. I'm saying if he wins and then serves out that second term, do you think that there will be weird, funny business at the end of it?
I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's very possible. He's got a staff that believes in expanding executive power. He has a group of people around him that don't like the demography of America. America's becoming too brown and too black for them. And they don't like the demography. And so if the whites are not going to be in power, democracy works, the whites are in power, they're the preponderance of the population. Oh, wait a minute, the whites are going to slip to below the majority of the population. Okay, let's change the rules. If the whites are not going to be in power, let's change the rules. And by the way, these people think like that. It's not just me saying it. Go listen to them. Go listen to the podcast. Listen to how they talk about the situation. And it's un-American to somebody like me. Your family, my family benefited from the flat structure of America. The founders understood that people don't do well with power. Something happens to us when we get power. We get corrupted, or we get headstrong, or we get full of ourselves. And that in order to protect the individual, you have to flatten out the power in a society and create lots of checks and balances. It saved us from Gary Gensler. The Bitcoin community, the crypto community, was saved by the founders. Gensler ordained as a czar that certain things were not going to happen, and they were against the standing administrative laws in the country. And so his edicts were challenged in the court, and the court reversed what he was saying. So that is the beauty of what we've got now. If you get into a situation where they start wrecking the checks and balances, what happens in a society like that is a very small group of people get very, very rich at the top that are currying favor with the ruling party or the ruling family, and the rest of the people get screwed, Frank. The promise of America has been that we have never allowed that to happen in this country.
What do you think is the story behind Elizabeth Warren and Gary Gensler? I think we spoke about this last time you joined the show. It looks like they're kind of losing.
Well, they are losing, but winning too. I mean, it's a mixed bag. Okay, so Elizabeth Warren definitely cut a deal with President Biden when he was vice president. Okay, he's running for the presidency. He's got to go into South Carolina to win. She drops out of the race alongside of Buttigieg and a few others, and he cuts them deals. Mm-hmm. And she has to stay in the Senate because they can't tip the balance because it's so fragile. So she can't go into the cabinet. but she wants to be the de facto president for financial services. So Biden says no problem. She selects Gary Gensler. Gensler is one of her acolytes. She has decided that she hates crypto. She has decided she has a superficial look at the asset. It is mathematical blather and a transparent, openly sourced spreadsheet. That's all it is to her. And so she doesn't understand that this is not that. This is a store of value. This is digital property, or this is electric money, to quote Michael Saylor. And this is a store of value that is impregnable and immutable. And so you have two choices. You can understand that and support it and regulate around it propitiously, or you can denounce it and try to stop it. Now, you have people in the banking community that she rails on. The irony is she rails on these people in the banking community, but she accepts donations from them.
Yeah.
And so now she's got people in the banking community telling her yes.
And they're supporting her on her anti-crypto crusade as well.
Stick it to the anti-crypto people. And she's polled it. And for a group of people, it polls well. So she puts those things out on Twitter that she's packing this anti-crypto army and support her. And Gensler is one of her acolytes. When you say that they're losing, they will eventually lose, yes, but they're still both in power. And they both have a lot of sway over the regulatory situation in the space,
I think with the backdrop of an FTX melting down and crypto prices being in the toilet, they have a bit of leverage, no pun intended.
No question.
But in a market where people are making money, I mean, there are millions of Americans in key demographic groups that don't want to see their access or their ability to engage with Web3 diminished or hindered.
Well, not only do I agree with that, but I would say something to you that I think maybe you'll agree with. You've got, according to Dan Tapiero, 73 million cryptocurrency wallets in the U.S. Now, maybe some people have more than one wallet, but let's just say there's 30 million adults that have cryptocurrencies. There's 30 million voters that have a pocketbook, a wallet that they may vote with. And so, that could hurt Biden. Now, Trump doesn't like crypto either, by the way. If you listen to his rhetoric on crypto, he doesn't like it. But Trump is more malleable. He could change tune in a general election.
He definitely, that's more so speaking to which is weird because he's not necessarily a hawk in the same way that like a Nikki Haley or Chris Christie might be. But that kind of speaks to the more national security element of preserving the integrity of the dollar that seems to be a thread within the Republican Party, whereas which seems less powerful than the more consumer protection bent of a Senator Warren.
Totally. I completely.
But maybe not necessarily.
Yeah, I can agree with you. But, I think you're right. They're going to lose long term, and they've lost a few cases on the margin, but they can still wreak havoc on us. And I'm not a doom and gloomer. I do think that if you put a gun to my head and said, will this Bitcoin Cash ETF be approved by January 10th? I'm going to say yes, because it just makes the most sense. That's Occam's razor. Whatever the most obvious outcome will likely happen. But you could also say to me, hey, you know what?
Yeah, it could take another 6 months or something. That longest.
They're going to pull the rug again. I'm not going to sit here and be
There's
surprised.
many different opinions on when it you get the decision, but it seems like on the whole more of a when than if. What does the appetite look like in terms of clients interested in accessing crypto via these funds? What sense do you have given your seat in your business?
So that's a really good question. And so I'm going to say something to you that's sort of this unspoken, not so secret reality of Wall Street. So the not so secret reality of Wall Street is that products are sold and not bought. And so I just want you to imagine an army, a legion of people who are going to be selling. They're going to bring coffee and donuts to these brokerage offices or these FA offices, and they're going to be giving the mantra speech about Bitcoin. And they're going to tell people put 1% in Bitcoin. And these are people that are traditionally buying ETFs. They're buying S&P ETFs or S&P dividend ETFs or bond ETFs. And now they'll have this ability to buy the Bitcoin ETF, which has been approved by the federal government. And it's been the best performing asset in the last 10 years, bar none. And so I think that these products, or this product, the Bitcoin Cash ETF, they're going to unleash a tens of thousands of people sales force.
Can you break down the differences between the client profile of someone who, I'm sure you have folks taking allocators of capital out for donuts for your private funds. What is the profile targeting those, or what is the profile of that group? And what's the profile of folks who maybe are waiting for that cash Bitcoin ETF?
Yeah, so the profile of that group is a higher threshold group. Those are people that typically have $1 million of net worth, a couple $100,000 in earnings, sort of a higher threshold. That's sort of the mass affluent. The target audience for Bitcoin, you in an ETF, you could put $500, $1,000, $2,000, up to an infinite number in an ETF. And so you have a much broader cross section of people that go to brokers for advice or go to Fidelity for advice. And then you get the self-brokerage community, people that are going on E-Trade or Fidelity.com to do their buys and sells. So there's a whole group of people there that could also be contacted and drive prices. And so the phenomena that people are not fully getting, and this is why I say that the cash ETF approval isn't fully priced into the marketplace, is that you don't have the traditional money managers in Bitcoin right now. You may have them in it personally. You may have in very tiny amounts. But I'm talking about somebody making a tactical asset allocation decision, is running $1 billion, is going to put 1% or $10 million into Bitcoin and spread it out among their clients. We don't have that right now. And you will get that as a result of this approval. And I think people are underestimating the power of Wall Street's marketing element to sell a product story like that. Remember, talking about narrative, it's all about the narrative. I need you to own some digital property. It's a good diversifier. As Kathy Wood says, it's a diversifier against inflation and deflation. It's just a great store of value. And you get, do the math, right? Yeah. Let's just take Fidelity at $4 trillion and BlackRock at $7 trillion. Okay. So 1%, we're talking about, I don't know, $110 billion going into Bitcoin. And those are just those two companies. So just add up the other ones that have all filed and add up the ones that are going to add on file after the fact.
Yeah. The idea or a paradigm in which, or reality in which, everyone who's setting up, their 401k or some sort of investment account, having those options for, conservative to aggressive, some sort of sliding scale of that, including crypto, that just doesn't exist today at all. And the 99.9% of wealth within the FA community doesn't touch crypto at all, except for maybe coin. You can call up a broker and they can buy you some coin. But aside from that, most people won't even get you.
So you're making the case for me. Just imagine winning some of those people over. And remember, prices change on the margin, and so if you have net gross demand that is up 20, 30%, and you have net gross supply that we know is mathematically going down 50%, you could have a price shock, and Frank, you've been in this market longer than me. You know, if I told you right now, it's 2 years from now, and Bitcoin's at $100,000 as a result of this unfolding, is that going to be unrealistic to you?
No, I think it's totally within striking distance.
Now, we could also have things that are happening, or we could have governmental movements or forcible regulation globally, but I think that genie's already out of the bottle. I don't I don't think they have the capability of doing that right now.
Yeah, and we can only get more clarity
and
as well.
Can happen,
outside of the ETF issue, we can only have something like Binance seems to be settling now with the government. They probably have the money to do that. Obviously, the SEC struggling really hard in their cases against Grayscale and seemingly Coinbase. So 2 bills as well going through Congress, the stablecoin bill, the market structure bill. So the upside seems to be more regulatory clarity in addition to these added financial or rather these ramps of inflows of capital. So there's 2 sort of tailwinds there. And I think the Binance thing can't be understated. The fact that we now have clarity about the extent to which this market participant that is a key player could have been blown out, we now know. And I think that's why you're seeing these coins rally on the news, even BNB rallying on the news. I mean, that's pretty striking. I think someone did the math.
But that's also smart governmental policy, right? So you had situations, Frank, with the mutual fund timing scandals going back into the early 2000s where you could have knocked out some very big players. The government decided not to do that. You had a situation in 2008, if they didn't fund the CDS exposure that AIG had. So remember, it was Goldman and a collection of other businesses, Citadel, et cetera, that owned the credit default swaps on Lehman Brothers. And that was backed by a AAA asset known as AIG. Well, AIG couldn't come up with the money because they had compression on their portfolio and their balance sheet. The government had to lend AIG $180 billion to clear those trades. If they didn't clear those trades, we would have had an even greater, more wild financial calamity. My point is that you're now set up where it's too big to fail.
Yeah.
It's begetting a level of momentum where the government is like, hey, I'm not going to put CZ out of business. Hey, I'm not going to put Goldman and Citadel out of business.
Going to hurt them hard, but not going to put them out of business.
Yeah, I'm going to hurt them. I'm going to fine them. We're going to give the $180 million, but they're going to pay a steep interest rate, have to pay us back. But the government could say, hey, I'm sorry, we're shutting CZ down, we're shutting Binance down, and if you're linked to it some way and your bank is tied to the Fed, we're going to give them problems. That would remarkably impair Binance. But the government says, no, we're going to pay a fine. We have hedge fund manager friends of mine that were accused of different things, and they were allowed to pay fines and stay in business. You see what I mean?
Do you think those hedge funds are more keen to invest in crypto a year out from everything that we went through?
I do.
And
I do. I don't see how you're going to be able. It's going to become an asset class. Okay. So in other words, not every hedge fund is invested in gold, but a very large swath of hedge funds are invested in gold or the gold ETF.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not going to be perfect saturation. But again, everything is on next level demand. Just imagine 10% of the hedge funds are saying, okay, I got to have some exposure. There's $6 trillion in the marketplace. So that's $600 billion. And let's say each manager puts in 1%. That's say it's 1 to 2%, $6 to $12 billion of buying demand. Right? And you just do that exponentially, and it will have a steep impact on prices. Now, again, things aren't perfect. The war could last longer than we all expect in the Ukraine. We have this calamitous situation in the Middle East. We have, I don't know, it felt like we were having some really good meetings with the Chinese last week, and then the president called the president a dictator.
It seems like that's cooled. I mean, they're giving us pandas. Biden's remembering his the Chinese president's wife's birthday. So there is seems to be some cooling or normalization of relations that I don't think many people expected out of that trip. But it's a very unpredictable situation. I mean, we could talk about,
but I mean, the Chinese need us. I'm just make this one point. The Chinese have a real estate and banking crisis going on.
Yeah.
They need us, And whether Americans like it or not, we need them.
I think that the Chinese have been caught a bit surprised by the extent to which their economy is really slowing. And so while they've been slightly aggressive in terms of their Navy presence and whatnot, I think they realize they have to be a bit more friendly. They can't sort of go balls in being anti-American, given that they need us for their economy to thrive.
100%. Yeah, I think you're right.
Talking politics for a second, I mean, I'm curious, it's not really relevant to what we talk about on the show, but is there anything you think that some of these candidates can do to get Trump off of 50% and above in the polls? I mean, it just seems almost hopeless. They're all picking at each other.
I would, and listen, I want to disclose to all your listeners and viewers, I'm a Chris Christie supporter. I've given him money. I've offered time and energy and support behind his campaign. And, Chris has made a case against Trump. But what I would like to see, and I've made this clear to them, and I've said this to others, if let's say I were running for president, which of course I never would run for president, but if I was running for president, I would say, listen, I'm running for president. I understand why you are supporting Trump. My job today and over the next 90 days is to explain to you why I am a better choice for you than Donald Trump.
Vivek is kind of doing that.
Yeah, so Vivek is the only one that's kind of doing that, but he won't.
Or Vivek, I should say.
But he won't do it to the extent that it needs to be done. He doesn't have, in other words, Christie's coming from an attack position and Vivek is under attacking. Okay, and what I would say to the American public is you want the same policies and you don't want the drama or the crazy. And you want somebody that has executive management skills that can help run the process out of the White House, empower the 5,000 people working for he or she to affect positive reform and change for you, the American people. And whether you like Mr. Trump or don't like Mr. Trump, he's got 4 years where he could do that. He doesn't have 8 anymore. He's 78. He's got a whole large group of people that absolutely can't stand him. And we're at a point in America, we're at a crisis point in America where we need to find somebody that's going to transcend the current politics and try to help the nation come together. And so the case has to be made for Trump in the following respect. I get why you're supporting him, and here are the policies that I agree with him on, but this is why you should choose me over him. Okay, Nikki Haley should be saying that. Chris Christie should be saying that, but they're not. Nikki's more or less ignoring him. Christie's bashing him. Okay, and I understand that, and I agree with a lot of what Chris is saying, and I am supporting Chris, but I would like more of, this is why, yes, right now, choice 1 is Trump. I may be choice 2 or 3, but I want to become choice 1. I want Trump to be your choice number 2. And let me explain why. And so we're not doing that. No one's presented that case. And here's the other thing. Americans are very smart, despite what the political consultants tell these politicians. And so explain to the American people what's really going wrong. Let's take Argentina for a second. Okay, I don't agree with everything the right-wing president-elect believes, but a lot of the things he said were true. You're not going to inflate your way to wealth and prosperity. You're not going to demoralize the entire society and cause a lack of trust in the currency or the property that you use to transact with each other as opposed to barter. You took a very rich country and turned it into a poor, mediocre country in 100 years through really wickedly bad policies. Okay, and so we know that socialism doesn't work, Frank, because it spoils the incentive game for people, and it also creates a lack of meritocracy. We know that. We have 150 years of data that supports what I'm saying, and we can see the wreckage of a place like Argentina. So now these people are completely fed up, and they went all the way over to the right on the pendulum. Okay, and are we much better than them? Are we that much better than them? I don't want hard right leadership in the country that could potentially strip away the checks and balances in the system, any more than I want hard left leadership in the country that's talking about nonsense like socialism. Look, I'm about equal opportunity. I don't want a poor kid not to get a good education, but I'm not about equal outcomes. I don't deserve the money that Jeff Bezos has. Jeff Bezos created a system that everyone is using, and it's lower prices, efficient, speedy, lower prices, faster delivery, speedy system. And he made himself $150, $200 billion doing that. God bless him. He deserves the economic rent associated with that bold idea and the execution of that idea. The flip side is, okay, you got to give somebody that has nothing an opportunity. We're a rich enough country to provide a package of services to somebody where, irrespective of the luck of the draw of their birth, they're here in the United States, one of the richest nations in history. Let's give them a chance at the starting block. So we're screwed up right now because no one is. I have heard no politician, Frank, frame it the way I just described it. But if they did, I think the people would be receptive to it. The reason why Vivek or Vivek, I'm not exactly trying to pronounce his name, is doing so well with a large group of young supporters is at least he is explaining it. Now, I don't like some of the things he says, and I'm not in love with him bringing Nikki Haley's daughter up in the debate. I don't think you do that. You don't go after the kids in the debate. You don't ever bring up the kids. When Trump brought up my wife on Twitter, I'm like, hey, man, she's a civilian. I gave you $1 million personally to help you become president. If you don't like what I'm saying, attack me, but don't go after my wife. I mean, who the hell are you to do that? You see what I mean? And so we've got this wrecking ball going where there's no decorum, and a result of which, if there's no decorum, you've got people, and they're showing this on YouTube, where congressmen are threatening to beat each other up.
I know. Did you see that?
See it. Come on, guys. We're better than that. Can't act like we're in an 8th grade lunchroom. So we can fix these problems, Frank, but it's going to take a bit.
Hopefully, it's going to take a bit of crypto. We got to check. Maybe we'll reach out to the former governor, see what his position is on crypto.
Christie's positive on crypto. Wouldn't be with him if he wasn't. Christie's attitude is
okay. So you've got the crypto element. You've got half Sicilian.
He's a libertarian. His attitude is, we want to build it here. It's going to get built somewhere. Don't lose the capital, intellectual or otherwise, from the United States.
Okay. Speaking of that, and it's a great way to close because I know we only have a few more minutes with you, but America's not the only horse in town or the only game in town. You're all over the place. Dubai, Asia, Singapore, building out Salt and your other businesses. Does it feel like, do you feel more energy as it pertains to crypto elsewhere?
Yes. No question. Crypto's been blunted in the United States. You don't have to go by me. You can ask Brian Armstrong, Mike Novogratz, other leaders in the industry. It's been blunted in the U.S. because of the lack of regulatory leadership. It's flourishing in London. It's flourishing in the UAE. It's about to flourish in Hong Kong. It's going to be held back in mainland China, but just think if the Chinese government controls Hong Kong, they're allowing it in Hong Kong. So yes, it's flourishing in other places. It's been held back by the Gensler, Warren, Batman and Robin, like Ghostbusters or anti-Bitcoin busters. They're driving around in the ambulance, wreaking dramatic havoc on all of us.
Only you can put it in such a interesting, dynamic way. Thanks for taking the time to come on the program. Really appreciate it.
You're the best, Frank. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
It's always good to be with you, man.
Yeah, pleasure was mine.